So with us tonight, we have Anthony Colonna, we have Phil Nemero, we have Allison Suriani, and we have Claudia Cra. And they are four awesome students, as I said before, that I have had the pleasure of having in class, that are here today to share with you their experiences, what it's been like to work in and attempt to find or transition positions, right, in this COVID virtual world that we're all living in right now. So I'm going to start with the ladies. Claudia, go ahead. Why don't you take 5 minutes and share with the group what your experiences have been?
Sure, specifically related to this time with the pandemic. I think that was something I imagined would or anticipated might be a question on here. But I could start with an intro as well, if that works. I think you mentioned that, Professor Walsh. Claudia Cra finished up supply chain management and German in the IBP International Business Program, finished in 17. And ever since I've been working with Georgia Pacific, we make everything from the Dixie paper cups and such to building products that go up on your buildings. I'm in procurement, so anything from storeroom inventory warehousing to buying position, and it's just been very, very data centric. I think that first question, though, Professor Walsh asked about relating to the pandemic is very important. I wanted to be a little bit positive, though, because I'm sure y'all are struggling in all kinds of different ways. I wouldn't even imagine what it's like being a college student right now. It's got to be a lot of these Zoom sessions, I'm sure. You guys may or may not have like the screen time burnout. That's got to be really difficult. We returned a few months ago to our facility offices, and it's been really good because I like being out in the field. I think there's always something new going on. But one thing I really wanted to call out as well, in case pandemic became a discussion topic, was something that we were kind of talking about 2 weeks ago in that College of Business career day. I think it came up in the international business session, where the panelists were talking about the changes and everything that we're kind of being faced with. And definitely, yes, like technology is going to be that prime example of saving money to travel and replacing in-person interaction. But with the job market more and more, I think that just challenges us to be kind of better, right? If we think about how it's got to be a very difficult situation that people are graduating to or entering the workforce today. I'm not trying to diminish that in any way, but there have been, disasters in the past. We've kind of had to overcome them and had to be adaptable and flexible in the past too, right? Think about the people who were graduating from college in 2008, 2009, when there was a housing market crisis, any of those kinds of situations. So yes, it's definitely got to be hard. It's definitely got to be challenging. But I think that's just forcing us to continue to be adaptable, flexible. How am I proving my worth or my value and my efforts to my team or my organization? So not just hard for the people entering the workforce. I'm sure my colleagues can kind of attest to this. We've got any kind of stage that you're in, you can be laid off as well. I've got friends and coworkers who have also unfortunately either been cut back or laid off. So any stage, I think we're forced to think more and more about what was recently like in the past known as job security, and thinking, oh, let me just do this or that and I'll be good. But what do we have that is going to continue to make us valuable, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Okay. So if I can interject, because that's what I have done for my entire teaching career, all 6 years, I interrupt. But I think you raised a couple of awesome points, and then I'm going to kick it right back to you. But none of us should be able to say, okay, I'm set, I'm on cruise control, I'm good. And I think that's the point you're trying to make. I mean, you need to be trying to think of and evaluate the ways that you can add value to your employer, like all the time. Even if you are the rock star in the group, I mean, don't be complacent because someone else wants to be the rock star. So you're always going to have some competition. One other thing I'll just say, and then I'm going to turn it right back to you, is that while there are certainly some challenges that have been presented to people as a result of, COVID, I think that those of us in supply chain are in a position to weather that storm better than others. It's not like we are in hospitality, travel and leisure, cruise ship industry, or pick something like that have been absolutely devastated. I've said this 100 times, in the last couple of months, but people have mentioned the word supply chain more in the last 6 months than they did in the last 16 years. And the average Joe and Jane on the street now has some comprehension about what supply chain means, which hopefully is an awesome recruiting tool for us to get more students into the program. But while there is a challenge, there are plenty of opportunities available to all of you students majoring in this program. You just need to work for it, and that's no different than pre-COVID. So I'll stop. What else would you like to share with us, Claudia, before we move on to the rest of the group?
Yeah, I think that was the main point. You summarized it really well. Not becoming complacent, really wanting to work hard, and then the other thing I was thinking about as well, in case pandemic come up, and I'd like to hear what else the other people on the panel say, but I think it's even more important as well to utilize those connections and build those connections that I'm sure your professors are telling you to go out and make. And it might sound cheesy, but that's definitely how I have gotten to where I am, not in a way that, I want to use somebody or something like that, but you never know a person that you meet. You could help them, they could help you somewhere later on down the line. It's not as much about what I know, and I got my college degree, I can kind of check the box. Like, yes, that's very important. I understand the theory behind things. But the execution and the hard work and everything else that Professor Walsh was just talking about are going to just come into play seriously as well, because the job market, as it gets tougher and it gets more competitive, it's a lot more important to have those referrals. If there's somebody that knows you are qualified or you're hardworking and you can make your case and they can help you get in the door, I think that's just going to continue to be important. It's always been important in the past. And it's good to have somebody as a mentor or a friend. But it's definitely going to continue to be important about what you know, and who knows what you know. I think those two things, the don't get complacent and the you're working hard, take breaks, but also make sure that you have time to meet people.
And some of those people some of those people can be alumni, excuse me, from the program here, because I have found all of you students that have graduated at least within the last 6 or 7 years, which, is the group that I am most familiar with, have gone out of their way to help current students any way you can. And so all you current students, seek these folks out on LinkedIn and leverage them. They're awesome. They will help you out. I do have to ask you one $1 million question. Does Georgia Pacific make toilet paper?
That's come up in every conversation I've had in the last 6 months. Yes, Georgia Pacific makes toilet paper. No, there was none to spare when everything was first happening. So I was in the same boat as everybody else. My plant makes wallboard that goes up on your buildings. So that was not useful to me during the pandemic supply concerns.
All right. So here's my follow-up question, and then I promise you I am moving on. Did I have to assume that Georgia Pacific said, okay, I have got this rash of panic buying going on with toilet paper. The overall demand, the overall need has not changed. Demand has gone through the roof. Consumption, that's the word I want. Consumption has not changed. So did you guys just kind of like look at it where, okay, we're going to ramp up production as best we can to meet demand, but be reasonably realistic with what we invest to create more capacity, because we know that at the end of the day, this is all going to come crashing back?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yes and no. I don't think I can answer as well from a sales perspective because I'm often looking at the purchasing side of things, the storeroom side of things. If one of the guys on my team has a question on something that we order on raw materials, anything that goes into making our product, or contracts that we've got coming in for people who work on our equipment. But when it comes to the supply of toilet paper in the market, I think that's a very good question. In years from now, you could probably do some sort of a case study on it, because you're absolutely right. We didn't have enough to meet demand. You couldn't have forecasted or predicted this in a way. I don't entirely know what Georgia Pacific's response was in a different division, but I will say I think it's creative how some people responded, right? If you know, people found a compromise and said, in the past, we've packaged it in bulk in like, what, 20 rolls, because it is, you know, fiscally or financially makes more sense for us. But during the pandemic, everybody wants to have some. So you change your 20 package to 5 or 10, something that, you know, can still meet that demand. I don't know if I'm using the right lingo or the terms that you taught us a few years ago, but I find that that's probably the plan B that, you know, they came up with. And we see that in the stores as well. When you're like looking, it's clearly changed from, you know, what used to be where you'd have gigantic packages and now they're smaller, or they're kind of doing whatever they can to essentially meet that concern. And supply chain logistics have definitely been involved in that.
All right, cool. Thank you much. So don't go far, 'cause we'll come back to you. All right, so I'm going to stick with the ladies first rule, because that's how my father raised me. So Allison, would you like to share your thoughts on COVID and work environment in the current state?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Allison Suriani. I currently work as a solution consultant for Oracle NetSuite. So you're welcome for TikTok, everybody. But we are the #1. I work for NetSuite specifically, which is the #1 cloud ERP system. And I'm in this training program right now where I'm learning how to leverage my ERP experience that I had from industry to then help present the software to prospective buyers and show them how NetSuite can help improve their business and add value and things like that. So it's definitely aligned with the background that I've had, which has kind of varied, which has been really cool. And now it kind of feels like it's all making sense because I have this background in various parts of supply chain, and now I'm able to kind of implement it. So when I first started out after graduating, I worked for BD, which is a medical device company, and I worked there for almost 3 years. And then now I worked for Revlon Cosmetics, which in terms of the pandemic, even though it wasn't really like hospitality or one of those big industries, people were not wearing makeup in the pandemic. And so their sales and things like that were definitely affected. We had to really be flexible in terms of adjusting what types of products we were sending into stores. So things like at-home hair color were really booming, or nail clippers and nail files. People weren't getting manicures. So those sort of products we had to kind of focus our efforts on and pull back on things like lipstick, because with a mask, you don't really need lipstick. And then in terms of now, I guess for me, I did make a career switch. The company that I worked for was really financially struggling pre-COVID. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced with your friends and family that then organizations are struggling during COVID. So I was fortunate I never lost my job, so it wasn't as stressful as what a lot of people have gone through. But when I was approached by NetSuite, it was definitely an exciting opportunity. So if anyone has questions or anything about searching for a job and starting a job remotely, it's definitely something that I'd be happy to speak to, but feel free to connect on LinkedIn as well if anyone has any questions on that, because I know it's definitely a weird thing to, meet and mingle with coworkers and stuff like that over Zoom, but it's definitely doable. And yeah, I don't know if that's
so you said something that I guess I didn't know, I wasn't sure of. So you were approached by headhunter consultant, so
Yeah.
you didn't actively go looking for this opportunity. You knew Revlon was kind of on the ropes maybe a little bit, and someone else sought you out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the program, it's kind of like, I'm sure you all, if you know, have LinkedIn, there's certain like rotational programs or things like that that are really geared towards students. This program is really geared towards people with they typically say around 5 years of industry experience, just so then they're able to leverage that. So that's kind of why they were able to find me in that respect. But
okay. You graduated what year?
2016. I know it kind of like took me back when you were like, they're all about 5 years of experience out of school. I was like, oh, feels like yesterday, but it goes by fast.
So again, I just, a comment for all of the current students that are, listening in here. I mean, so, here Allison has been out of college for 4 years, had a couple of different positions prior to the one she currently has right now, yet already is in a position where consultants or headhunters rather, okay, are seeing her as having attractive qualities that that they're looking to try and match up with other employers. So again, I'm just doing this as a pump air in the tires of supply chain and telling you that if you work hard and you do well and you get some experience, people will start to come looking for you. So I didn't know that's how you got into this, but that's an interesting take here, which is a good. I mean, that's a nice little ego shot. So
yeah, and y'all are definitely lucky to be in this program. And like we said, supply chain's never been hotter in terms of its value to an organization. So places where they're cutting, I don't know if you guys all or you all have experienced this as well, the other industry folks, but even if they are, making cutbacks and things like that, for the most part, it's not supply chain, not done with. So,
all right. So, one other quick question, then I'll get to the men. I know you touched upon this during career day, but in case we got a couple of people that might be on board here that were not here at career day, how was it to transition from one company to the next in a virtual environment? Because have you physically been to the corporate offices or any regional office for the employer that you are now working for?
Yeah, no, I've done everything virtually, so it's a blessing to be able to do it. And a lot of people I get are physically going into work, and it's always a risk, but I interviewed virtually. I started the job, all of our orientation. We do projects. It's really, I'm sure a lot of you are doing virtual schooling, and it's similar to that. It definitely is easier because of the type of job I took. There is a lot of programming and a lot of resources that maybe in a more traditional job I might not have, but it's definitely doable. I wouldn't let that piece scare you as much, just because you all are learning virtually right now. So you'll definitely be able to do it from a job perspective.
Awesome. All right. Anthony, you want to give us a shot?
Sure thing, Professor. All right. So hi, everybody. It's nice to see all of you. I see a lot of familiar faces from, supply chain night and the career day. So that's great. Good to see you again. So my name is Anthony Colonna. I graduated from the supply chain program at URI in 2017. I was a part of the supply chain club exec board. I served as the vice president my senior year, along with Claudia. So after graduation, I took a job down in Newark, New Jersey, for a company called Ports America. So basically it was a container terminal for international cargo ships. So, anything that you could think of that's shipped in containers, comes into the port, and we're, in charge of, supervising the operations of moving that freight around. So I did that role for a little over a year. but then decided that that was not the route that I wanted to, stay on for, 40 years of my life. So I actually was pursuing some graduate school opportunities. Claudia's laughing over there. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so I decided to pursue some graduate school opportunities, and I ended up going back to URI for a full-time 1-year MBA program, which I finished up in August of 2019. While I was in the MBA program, I was pursuing different full-time opportunities for after graduation, and I landed a role at BD or Becton Dickinson in our Warwick, Rhode Island office. And I've been there since May of 2019, so almost a year and a half now. I work with our procurement team that supports the surgery business unit of BD. So across the whole company, there's 10 different business units. So I support just one of those business units for the whole company. In our business unit, we manufacture mostly devices that are used in elective surgeries, such as hernia repair. So as you can imagine, during the COVID-19, those first couple of months, elective surgeries were not happening. So a lot of the sales that we would have normally for our surgery business unit went down. So that, our surgery business unit was the most heavily affected, area of the company. However, different, business units throughout BD did thrive during that time. We have a diagnostics unit, which created testing units for COVID-19. So obviously, they're getting a lot of business, in that area. So, we've been able to, sort of bounce back in the past few months as certain surgeries have started to open up again. And we're moving to try to get back to where we were, pre-COVID-19. Was there anything else that you want me to address, Professor?
Nope, that's good for the moment. I'm sure we'll come back to you, so don't run far.
All righty.
All right, Phil, saving the best for last.
Naturally. All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Phil Nemero. I'm the youngest of all four of us. I graduated in 2018. So I currently work up at Hanscom Air Force Base. I'm a government civilian for the Department of the Air Force. I'm on a 3-year rotational period or program, sorry. So each year I rotate into a new program. And so that gives me a lot of experience because a lot of my coworkers are former military. So I work with a lot of former majors and captains in the Air Force, and even just in general, the program offices up here have a lot of officers as opposed to enlisted folks, like other big bases. Our logistics up here is a lot different than anything that I learned in school. We kind of pay big defense contractors. So think like Northrop Grumman or Raytheon or BAE, those types of companies. We pay them a bunch of money to kind of manage our systems up here. So we focus a lot on the IT infrastructure. We focus a lot on radar systems and communication systems up here. So my logistics experience isn't what you've heard today. I perform government oversight is basically the best way to put it. I have to have the knowledge of supply chain behind me to ensure that they're doing their stuff correctly. And so they have to abide by the terms of their contracts and whatnot. So that's really kind of my logistics kind of experience up here. So I started up here back in September of 2018. It was my first job right out of college. So I spent basically the summer just waiting to actually on board on this job. Professor Walsh, you'll like this. There are now, I believe, 8 people within the past 3 years that work for Hanscom up here that are graduated from the supply chain program. And then I just found out too, in my last program that I was on, my head program manager was a 2-time URI grad as well. So there's a big URI presence up there now. So it's great.
So quick side story. Again, I'm interrupting. Steve LaFleur came and addressed the supply chain club. And is he your direct boss or not? Or
He is my my big boss.
okay,
So
fine.
to
So
us.
he's your boss's boss, whatever.
Mhm.
But he was telling us how he was he had all of his recent hires like giving presentations to a broader audience, and the audience started saying, well, where did you go to school? And they said, well, I went to URI. I went to supply chain program at URI. I went to supply chain program at URI. And they were like, well, wait a minute, like, is this the only place we're looking for students, right? And he kind of almost like almost had to peel back a little bit because, you know, there was this like, geez, is this the only place we hire from? But he's coming back now because he's realizing that, you know, he can get some quality students out of the program. So I think that's awesome that you got 8 people in there. There's a student I've got in class right now who just interviewed, I think, with somebody I know, I don't know who, but with somebody, you know, at Hanscom yesterday afternoon. So the
Oh wow.
the train keeps rolling down that track, which is great.
Yeah, let me just say that. So Steve answers to the 2-star general on base, and so the 2-star knows all about us. I got stuck in line one time right in front of him, so I got to talk to him about URI and stuff. So the 2-star knows all about URI as well. So that's pretty cool that there's a major general in the Air Force that that knows all about the URI supply chain program too.
Yeah. Keep spreading the word.
Absolutely, you know it. So right now, I actually I just so there's 2 parts to what I'm going to talk about. Is one actual kind of supply chain ish stuff that I experienced in my last program, and then also where I'm at right now. So my last program was a joint program with Canada, and it basically mapped the entire airspace above North America. And so we had some Canadians in our office too, right on base. But we also had some program offices up in Canada, spread throughout the country. And it was a radar program. And so when COVID hit, we were just about to start a whole upgrade to a new baseline of our system. So we were on one technological baseline, and that was kind of getting out of date. So we had to upgrade the whole system. And so we were just getting ready to do that when COVID hit, and then all these travel restrictions came into play. And then we had to start going through the embassy to get our equipment over the border, because this was pretty critical stuff to upgrade our radars up there, so that way they can track all the planes that are flying above North America, which is a major national defense initiative. So we were looking at lead times of, luckily it wasn't too long. Sometimes it was like 3 weeks. I think the longest that I had to deal with was like 1.5 months. But again, we just paid a defense contractor money to really deal with this, and we had to make sure that it was getting through on time and whatnot. So that's really the closest thing to the logistics that are being taught at URI right now that I have to talk about, because I just moved to a new program just a little bit over a month ago. And the program's called Cloud One, and it is the Air Force's cloud program, basically. It's their preeminent cloud program. And so what we deal with is we are migrating all these systems in the Air Force to the cloud. And so we leverage both Amazon Web Service, which you were talking about earlier, Professor, and Microsoft Azure. And so this logistics on this side is really focused more on the technological piece of it. So I have to look at all of these licenses that we get to help maintain the security of the cloud, because it's, while AWS and Azure have their built-in security, I work for the DoD, so we have to have that added extra piece of security involved there too. So that's really kind of what I'm dealing with right now. Dealing with just a lot of processes, a lot of license renewals. There is the entire Air Force's financial system is being migrated right now. And so when that happens, I'm going to have to deal with taking care of all their servers wherever they're located, and disposing of them and making sure that they get demilitarized and whatnot, which you don't think that a finance system can be militarized, but they are. So that's really what that is. I started this program completely virtual, which was weird because I had been going into the office or going to base like 3-4 times a week on my old program, just because we were able to if we wanted. So it's been pretty interesting moving from a hardware-centric program to a software-centric program, while also completely virtual. But Zoom for government and Microsoft Teams have been a huge help. We just have these video chats every single day. My mentor, her and I have an end of day discussion every single day. I got off that like 5 minutes before this call. So it's really just making sure, kind of to what everyone has been saying, is like making sure you keep those relationships with people and you build those. And even though you're virtual, they are able to be built. It's a little bit more difficult, but as long as you have like the face-to-face, even just like this, relationships are very important for transitioning to a new position or starting a new position virtually.
Right, so
I hope I covered everything.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that a fair amount of what you do in your current and prior role there is supplier relationship? Or not?
I don't, kind of, not like in the sense where I have to like go out to dinner with them or like talk to them all the time. It's more
They
so
don't allow
just
you to do that anymore now anyway.
Exactly. But it's more of just making sure that they don't get mad per se, because while we are still technically the customer, they still drive everything. And so we have to have a clear and consistent and good relationship with our vendors, because otherwise, how are we going to get stuff done? And how are we going to, because their focus is profits. Our focus is national defense. So making sure that there's that clear balance between the two is achievable.
Okay. Nick, did you have some questions you wanted to throw out to the group?
Yeah, sure. So anyone can take this. I was kind of wondering what would be the single biggest surprise that that you thought would happen when COVID started happening, say like, March 1st, and what actually happened. What was the biggest, what caught you off guard the most with it regards to your job?
I'll jump in, and then I don't know if this might probably be something shared, but our big plug has been whatever the state's guidelines are, to follow them. So in manufacturing and in manufacturing where you have very aged equipment that we're actually still in the process of trying to change to new equipment, it's very hard for operators to still be able to do what they're trying to get done on the equipment, or techs trying to change out the equipment without, breaching that social distancing, right? That guideline that we're supposed to be following. So I'm located in the Northeast for this division. So I have 2 plants that I'm responsible for their spend. And I think Professor Walsh kind of already talked about this, but all of a sudden it became very critical that we had to have face coverings, surgical masks, and this is back in March when, the only surgical masks or KN95 masks that you would think of would be for somebody in a medical field, or I think we still do have dust respirators for when you go into an area that's very, very dusty or dirty on the equipment for safety reasons. But that wasn't, the supply we had wasn't going to cut the demand that we suddenly needed. So that surprise, I'm sure everybody can say, like, I'm surprised that we're wearing face masks or face coverings. I wasn't doing that a year ago. My job turned into, it went from managing a couple of people at each of my sites and that being the top priority to make sure that we had our raw materials or our parts coming in at a consistent basis. That was previously it is my job. But the role and the priority suddenly transfer from that to we have to have masks, gowns, gloves, and anything that you can find in the meantime, like a bandana will work kind of mentality. So I think that was probably the biggest surprise. Now it kind of seems simple because we put them on every time we leave the house, but trying to be able to locate them from the most creative sources that you could at the time was definitely a surprise.
Did you ever run into instances where you had to shut down manufacturing because you did not have the proper PPE?
So that's a good question. Yes and no. We did get the basics coming in. We even had a few days where it was that in between where you're waiting for something to come in because of all of a sudden the demand's going up for surgical masks, where we were even saying, can we find like cloth napkins on Amazon or some things to be able to use, because our production was still allowed to be able to run in the Northeast. So my site in New Jersey, which is really right in between like Philly, New York area, you think about, that's got to be tough area to manage, as well as my site in New Hampshire. Both were still allowed to run and able to run with those state guidelines. But you had to follow social distancing, PPE, everything else. So in short, we did not have to. A coworker of mine had a site out in California that did stop for maybe half a week, something like that, because they had a period in between where they were trying to get legal to review everything and ensure that they had the supply of everything to be able to be running and operating safely. But we did not have to, knock on wood.
Yes, and my next one is for Phil. So I was kind of wondering, I guess since you're more in I was wondering, is the military, and how has that dynamic worked with following guidelines? What kind of guidelines has that been? Has supplying troops of overseas and stuff and bases, how has that dynamic worked in regards to PPE and COVID and stuff?
So the base is so two parts. So the base currently that I work out of up here at Hanscom, they follow what's called a trailing method. So whatever the state of Massachusetts is doing, we are going to wait like 2 extra weeks before we follow those same guidelines. So for personnel to get to base, we're pretty much told don't come to base if you don't have to. So that's pretty much how everything's running right now. Obviously for like the secure calls, when anything hits a certain classification level, you have to go to base. So they won't turn you away at the gate. They won't ask you why you're on base, but it's just extremely highly encouraged not to come to base. But in terms of troops overseas and whatnot, that's not really handled too much out of my base. We just focus, like I said, primarily on radars, communications, and IT infrastructure stuff. We are very officer heavy on this base, which is rare in the Air Force. We kind of live up in a bubble is what I like to call it up here, because most bases will have enlisted folks who do get deployed all the time. So in terms of PPE and all that stuff, that's not really handled or dealt with too much out of this base, just because we don't have people that deploy like enlisted folk do, per se.
So you have all Chiefs, no Indians.
Pretty much, yep.
Which
all
means
the Type A personalities up here.
Which means nothing gets done at your base, is that right?
Hey, it's government anyway, so nothing gets done.
Oh, okay. Don't tell me that, because that's my money you're spending right now.
No, we make sure everything's done.
Yeah.
And the 2-star general that I was talking about earlier, he was the biggest proponent of not ever working from home. So this pre-COVID, he
Yeah.
hated people like working from home. Once COVID hit, and then we were forced to do this, he cannot stop talking about how effective it has been for all of our programs, just because he wasn't confident that we'd be able to get the job done and whatnot. But there has been no gaps in coverage whatsoever.
Yeah, that has been one of the biggest societal shifts that have occurred here is, I don't think some of those generals were unique in their thought that, you have to be in the office. You cannot service your customers unless you are in the office. But now that you were forced to do it and you found out, hey, we can make this work. It is going to be interesting to see over the next couple of years what companies do with these, multi-$100,000, 100,000 square foot office buildings. And so the same reason I am not currently investing in travel and leisure, I am also avoiding commercial real estate at the moment. But anywho, Nick, you got one other quick question for somebody, and then maybe we open it up to students in the audience to see if they have anything they'd like to ask the panel.
I think I'm good right now. You actually asked a lot of mine. But if anyone from exec
sure.
has one spot, oh, come on. I told you some. Yeah, so if anyone from exec has any questions, or then we just pass it over to open.
Yeah, so why don't, anybody who, there's 27 or so people on the call here, which is awesome. That's better than we get when we have a live meeting. So I'm glad you guys were all able to dial in. I'm sure it's because of the panel that's here. That's why we got such a good crowd. So anybody, just unmute yourself if you have a guest that a question that you would like to ask anybody on the panel.
So I have a question for Anthony. So with my healthcare provider experience and my internship, it's from my understanding that most elective surgeries and non-essential surgeries are done in the wintertime or late fall due to recovery time. So that being said, hopefully COVID diminishes soon, but do you think there could be a possible boom in demand next winter? And how so would that affect your inventory supplies? Or do you guys anticipate that would happen?
Yeah, that's a good question, Anthony. So I work, so I'm part of our procurement team. We don't do as much of the demand forecasting kind of thing. That's more of our supply chain team. But, I definitely can, as I said, in those first few months, that business with, our surgery products was very slow because of the elective surgeries. But, they have been coming back. We're trying to get back to where we were, pre-COVID. We're doing everything that we can to, ramp up production to, make up for that lost business that we had those first few months. So, I definitely think there is a possibility that that there is a boom like you're saying, but it's kind of hard to predict, and you don't know who patients might not be so willing to go back and do these kind of surgeries. They might be afraid to go back into a hospital or operating room based on the conditions. So I guess that's something we'll just kind of have to track going forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You got it.
And then maybe what kind of devices do you guys carry? I know your focus is in surgical, but what other devices would have been affected by COVID, like catheters?
So that's a good question. So for our surgery business unit, we manufacture hernia meshes. We also manufacture what's called fixation devices that are used during surgery. So it's basically, it looks like a gun that tacks the mesh into the patient during the surgery. as well as we manufacture these hemostatic powders that are used, you know, to basically stop bleeding during surgery. So those are like the main products for our surgery business unit. But BD has like a very wide portfolio across the whole company of, you know, different products, you know, everything ranging from, you know, a syringe to, you know, to a catheter, like you said, you know, so there's a lot of different products that, you know, that we manufacture.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else have a question that they would like to ask of the group?
I have a quick question for Phil or Allison. So in addition to your supply chain management studies at URI, did you also have a background in computer science to get the jobs that you have now? So working with the cloud and as well as NetSuite?
I guess, Allison, you want to go first?
You can go if you want. You were already off mute.
I don't have a computer background per se. My parents both are software coders. My dad writes all the software for Citizens Bank, model, like their whole model risk program and whatnot. And then my mom writes a bunch of code for Blue Cross's claims department. So when you get all that, when you go to a doctor and you submit like your insurance policy, that's a claim. So she has to write all the code behind all that. So I grew up around that, and I'm currently getting my pursuing my MBA with a concentration in business systems and analytics. So I guess I kind of grew up around it, and it's always been an interest point for me. But that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And then for me, I have no background in anything computer related. So I think that's just kind of important to recognize too, that companies are willing to teach you some things that you might not know. Like I didn't know what the cloud was other than that I have like my iCloud. Like I didn't really understand necessarily the difference between like software and hardware and stuff like that when I first started literally 2 months ago. So that's just me being really honest with you. So don't let things like that limit you when you're applying for jobs. So just like I didn't know anything about med device when I started working in med device. And I'm sure Claudia didn't know anything about toilet paper or like paper products and that manufacturing process. So there are certain things that if you come to the table with your supply chain knowledge, like they will take it to the next level for you. So do anything you can like with Excel and those sort of like baseline tools, and then they'll be willing to help kind of bridge the gap for the rest of it.
Can I add into that point? I think it was such a good question. And I think a lot of it comes up between Anthony's question and Colin's question, that there are going to be so many things that I'm not prepared for in my next role. There are going to be so many things that everybody on this call never learned in a classroom. I mean, I was looking at spreadsheets yesterday and today, and I mean, it's good to have that Excel background and knowledge. But ultimately it was numbers that I was looking at that I was trying to, resolve and find some sort of a result for. And I said to myself, jokingly, like, I took a finance class once. I took Joe Diadamo's accounting. Oh, he's not there anymore. Oh, man. Well, anyway, I took Professor Diadamo's accounting intro class that time because it was required. I'm pretty sure I understand the basics of what this is trying to tell me. And that's what I needed in that situation. But I think Allison's point and Phil's point are so true that even if you don't have a complete background in it, if you had an internship in it, if you had a class in it one time or a project, or you listen to a couple of YouTube videos on it, and wherever we kind of like expand our knowledge, because it's not really realistic as well. I'm saying this because I think it's a very important point. I'm not mad you asked the question. I'm glad you asked the question because I was in the same boat. I thought I had to know everything by the time I got my diploma, and otherwise it was out the door, or I wasn't going to be successful or something like this. But it's not realistic to think I'm going to learn everything I need to know in 4 years or 6 years or anything like that. And, hopefully life continues, right? Pandemic made it a little bit dicey there, but we're all still here, hopefully staying safe.
We're safe. I'm interjecting. So I think what's really important to demonstrate to a prospective employer is the ability to be able to adapt, understand, comprehend, and I mean, data analytics is big, and there is no way, I think to Claudia's point, you are going to be able to be proficient in the hundreds and hundreds of different types of programs that are out there that different organizations use. But if you can show them that you have latched on to one or two and you have adapted and you have learned and you cannot just manipulate data, but just as importantly, you can understand what data is trying to tell you. I mean, that's where the world is. I mean, it is a data-driven society that we are living in. Not everybody has to be able to yank the data. If you can, great, right? But just as importantly as yank the data is you need to be able to step back and look at the data and understand, what is it trying to tell me? What are the trends? What are the bits and nuggets in here that are going to help me move my business forward? Well, Colin, I thought that was a great question.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Who else has a question? I mean, we'll go as long as we're humming along. We're coming up. We got 7 minutes before we hit 6 o'clock. We kind of usually like to keep these in the 1 hour range to respect our panelists, and that kind of becomes a burnout time. But we will entertain questions for as long as we can. So anyone else have a question for the audience or for the panel?
Hi guys. Sorry, my camera isn't working, but I do have a question. So there was a panelist earlier that came on in Tessa's class. But I've been curious to find out if there are any additional certifications that you guys pursued after graduation or you guys found helpful, or is your degree the only thing you basically needed to thrive in the industry? Apart from the Six Sigma Green Belt, I don't have a specific person to ask the question. So.
Okay, so you know what, Neri, I think that was a great question. So across the 4 panelists, have you, you can each go quick, bang, 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 but have you, has there been any certification or any, okay, I guess I'll stop at certification that you have added to your repertoire upon graduation?
Yeah, I could take that, Professor. So in the MBA program, we actually were enrolled in the Microsoft Excel 2016 course. So we had the opportunity to take that base level Excel as well as the expert level. So I was able to complete the basic level during the MBA program. And currently I'm pursuing the APIC Certified Supply Chain Professional certification. So I'm taking a 10-week course and then plan to take the exam to get certified in that as well.
Okay, awesome. Allison, Claudia, Phil, anything to add?
I mean, the Excel certification that you get through school, that's the only certification I have right now. Still going through, I'm get my analytics certification through my MBA too. But that Excel one, that is very extremely important to have going into anything.
Basic or the expert level, do you think?
You know what? I'll answer that one for you. So Neri, based on you're a senior this year, correct?
Yeah, finishing in December.
So you need to at least have that 310 class.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, which is the specialist. All right. Any students that is online that is, participating in this event tonight, if you are a freshman or a sophomore, 310 is a required class for you. You have no choice but to take it. Awesome. Okay. That's the specialist. That's call it level 1. There is a expert level, which is the next level beyond specialist. Right now, today, October 29th, I don't believe URI offers the expert certification. You can get that though online. Soon, URI will offer it. So you guys just need to keep that on your radar screen, because at minimum, you need Business 310 or SCA 310 or whatever it's going to be called in the new world. But for those of you that can go past that and get that expert certification, that just demonstrates to prospective employers your ability to be able to adapt and learn different types of programs. And as long as you can demonstrate to them, they will take the time to show you whatever it is that they use, whether it's some program off the shelf or something they have custom built. Does that answer your question, Neri?
Yes, awesome. Yeah, I already know about the Excel, and the Business 410 class I actually saw Apex for the first time. So it's good to know that those will actually come in handy.
Yeah, even if, I'll tell you, if you Googled, supply chain certifications, you're going to come up with a list of things that will specialize in different areas of supply chain that, and the more tools you got in the toolbox, the more attractive you're going to be to a prospective employer. All right. Somebody else got a question for the panel.
I had a question.
Go for it.
My question would be, was there something, I'm a senior this year, so my question would be, was there something that you did kind of in the last stretch of your college career that you were really happy you did that helped you kind of land that first job out of college, or something that you wish you did that you thought would have helped you a little bit better?
Great question.
And that's for everybody.
Can I jump in? I think it's a really good question. I think I know what the answer is. I think I said it in the beginning too, or people have said it throughout, but is just, again, networking, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And I did not think of it at the time, but looking back and being close with other classmates or other professors, like in these clubs and things, I think that benefited people tremendously. And you don't think about it at the time of like seeing this professor as a mentor, but definitely I think that support system or showing that you care and you want to be there to be a part of the program is really, really important, because all those other things we've talked about, technology, big data, metrics, knowing how to use Excel, certifications, all those things are good. They're very important and we need those things. But if I'm not really able to bridge the connection, what is it all for? I mean, even to this day, like Anthony sent us a group chat last week or this week from a picture from 4 years ago. Sometimes it's just a little bit nice, and I think that is something that I'm really grateful for. I think wish I had done a little bit more from the beginning. But you're absolutely right. I think that's one of my favorite parts about senior year. And I think it's got to be challenging right now with everything that's going on. So I hope they all don't burn out and kind of continue to stay connected and stuff.
Yeah, I actually sent Claudia a picture of us from the career day, our senior year. It was like 4 years ago this week. So that was pretty cool. But to answer Catherine's question as well, one of the things that I did was doing the Six Sigma Greenbelt project in my last semester at URI. I actually worked with Claudia on my Greenbelt project at South County Hospital in Wakefield. So that was a awesome opportunity to be able to, implement a real life project and see results from it. Especially since I had only had one prior internship experience before that semester. Being able to have another opportunity to put on my resume, talking about working with a real company, was very valuable and helped me, pursue those full-time opportunities for after graduation. So.
And then I know that we have beat this horse very dead, I guess, at this point, but the Excel certification, I know you all being sensitive to the fact that you might not be able to do internships right now. that is what set me apart in my internship that I ended up getting a job from, was that I had those baseline Excel skills. So I was able to be given projects that utilized Excel in, at the time it felt advanced, but I'm sure now it was like, training wheel stuff, but it's all important. Any edge that you can get in terms of what your new boss will have to teach you, that's always a good thing.
Okay, I'm cutting in. While you might, and Phil, I'll turn, go ahead, Phil, go ahead, add your 2 cents and I'll come back.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, the soft skills are really what I think I honed in on during my senior year, that I think are extremely important. When I interviewed for the job with the Air Force, I had the worst sinus infection of my life, but just being able to walk through and being able to develop a connection with my now boss, who was interviewing me at the time, just being able to have those connections, and I know it's difficult, like face to face like this, but make sure you're just maintaining like your eye contact. Because I don't think I looked away once when I was talking to him. Stuff like that goes a long way with interviewers and prospective employers. So try to hone in on those too, and that's what I did my senior year.
All right, so I think everything that you guys have said, soft skills, hard skills, technical skills, I mean, they are all relevant. I will also tell you that, I mean, anyone that has, is taking 255 with me right now, I mean, I have walked in with internship opportunities the last 2.5 weeks of companies saying, hey, we want to hire a URI grad. It is on handshake. And it's like, let's do it, right? So, I am telling you, those opportunities are out there. They're not easy, but they are out there. So I won't mention names, but I had a student in my office last week who said to me, I have 4 internships that have been offered to me for this upcoming summer. Which one do you think I should pick? And if I rattled off the 4 names of those companies right now, everybody would know them. They are big time companies. So it is there. It just requires work. And it is not like apply to 1 or 2. It's applied to 50, 75, 100, whatever. What is the worst thing that can happen? You walk in my office and say, hey, I got 4 choices. I don't know which one I should take. Awesome. Let's talk about that.
It sounds a lot like Claudia my senior year.
Yeah, well, you know what? I had another question for Claudia. I want to know, so if you guys were on this Greenbelt project together, did Anthony really pull his weight, or did he just kind of like drag the team down?
I didn't want to interrupt, but he was an awesome partner. We had it's a side note that we will not bring up in this call because I think we're being recorded right now, and that would not be
We are being recorded.
We had a third partner who was a little bit shaky, but still turned out on top. And that person is doing very well today, and that's good. But Ant is where it's at. You want him as your coworker or your group. I'm being silly now, but he was a good partner.
Thank you, Claudia. Appreciate that.
Ant. Okay, I got a new name for you. All right. Anyone else? Somebody in the audience got a question for the group, and Catherine, thanks for that question. Anybody? I'm doing the mental countdown in my head.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask anything you'd like. Yep.
Is everyone here a supply chain major? Just because, I mean, I figure, majority or maybe even 90, 100% are going to be, but I think it's always fun to check and see.
Yeah, I mean, I could have created a poll question if I was on the ball, but I wasn't. But I am scanning through the names, and I will tell you right now that, yes, the vast majority are supply chain majors. And you know what? There's a mix of grades as well.
That's really good. I think if people get involved early, it's going to just make you more connected, like we've been talking about. It's going to get you ahead on some of those classes. I feel left out. I think it's awesome that Excel is required now, but I didn't speak earlier because I was embarrassed. It wasn't required before I graduated, so I graduated without doing the Excel certification. But to this day, I use Excel every minute of every day. So it's learn Excel.
Yeah, Claudia's probably still better at Excel than me, even though she didn't take that class, so it's okay.
Okay, someone else have a question for these folks?
How important is data how do you say it? Data
Visualization?
Yeah, yeah,
All
for
right.
you guys.
One of you guys want to take that?
So I can speak to it a little. Like, do you just, when you say data visualization, you just mean any sort of like visual tools like dashboarding and things like that, right? That's what you're
More
or
for
just
like presentations. Do you guys find
Yeah.
that you guys make presentations more often than not, and you guys need data visuals, or?
So anytime, really the thing with data, and this is something that you'll hone as a skill, it's about making it digestible to the person that's viewing it. So you as like an individual contributor are going to value different things than when you're presenting something to your manager or to a director. And so it's a really good question. You always are trying to like create dashboards or tables or whatever to just to try to have the best possible presentation. And I'm sure that you all feel the same way, even if you're not necessarily presenting data in a literal sense, like in a PowerPoint, you know, up by a board, like talking to someone. The data that we handle in our jobs is all the time being sent to people who are, you know, up the ladder from us. And, you know, it has to be presented in a way that's the most palatable, because sometimes your boss's boss's boss is presenting the data that you processed, if that makes sense. So it's a really good point. And so tools like NetSuite, that's why one of the reasons NetSuite is really popular is because of the dashboarding that's native to the software, which that's a little specific, but yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think data visualization is important. I think just as important to that is understanding the audience you're trying to present to and making sure that you are structuring the information in a way that they can digest it, understand it, and follow what you're saying. Because if you like cloud them up, then they're going to drift on you. So understanding who your audience is and making sure that you are presenting in a way that fulfills the need for that audience is something to be conscious of as well. But you know what, Neri, anything, you've asked a couple of questions like in that same realm, anything with data and analytics and information sharing and information decision making is where we are all, industry is evolving too. I mean, very little is done right now because I think I might feel like I got a gut idea, like not when you're making, you know, multi-million-dollar decisions. It is going to be data driven.
And to add on to that, though, I think that Professor Walsh and Allison were really accurate in that big data is going to take even more importance. I don't know if anybody has Netflix or watched that documentary on the social dilemma a few weeks or months ago, but tech and big data are going to continue to be important. And if I'm explaining it to someone else, that just challenges me to definitely need to know what's going on. If my customer or my end user ultimately can't understand it, do I understand it enough? And if I can manipulate it and do all those sort of things and find stuff and results with the data, that's great. But what does that all kind of mean? Because it's going to be used to make decisions. So if I can understand the bite-sized pieces of that data as well, I think that continues to be valuable.
Awesome. So you know what? It's 6:11. Let's we got one more question from the group. If somebody would like to ask the question of the panel, and then I think we'll let these people get on in their evening. So if anyone in the audience has one last question for them, jump on board right now. Okay, I guess we're going to say we're good. So Allison, Anthony, Phil, Claudia, I cannot thank you enough on behalf of, the Supply Chain Club, the Supply Chain Program, URI, all the students that came before and after you. I appreciate more than you know, your willingness to stay involved in this program. I mean, it is students like you that over time, and you continue to stay involved, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and it is just going to make this program even more solid than it is today. So I thank you on behalf of both the college and the students. So that said, everybody, awesome night. Thank you very much. We did record it. We will blast the link out for those that were unable to attend. Everybody stay safe. Have a great weekend. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.